You are listening to Fox Radio 910 and 104.3. Welcome to Front Porch Tales, sponsored by Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia. My name is Linda Balentine, the president of Crowning Touch and your host for this series. I travel into the mountains to interview the people of Appalachia and collect their share of memories. So now, we invite you to sit a spell with us and listen to stories, both historical and current, that emanate from the heart of Appalachia. All righty. So here we are again with Tony Tree. Tony, I'm so excited to get back with you because I love listening to your stories. They bring back the finest memories ever. And I want you to tell me your sheep shearing story. Let's kick off today with your sheep shearing story. It's going to be a good one. What's your experience with sheep?
Well, Linda, first, thank you. Thank you for having me back on. And hi to everybody out there. And I hope Linda, through this program, is instilling everybody the desire to get in their cars and ride through Highland County and the neighboring counties, because this is a unique part of the world. There's nothing like it anywhere in the United States.
That's correct.
When they say Virginia's for lovers, when you drive through the mountains, you're going to fall in love.
That's right.
You're going to fall in love with the mountains.
That's right.
And it's a wonderful thing, Linda, that you have going. So, but thank you for having me on again.
Well, it's lots of fun. Tell me about sheep.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story about sheep. Well, it ain't about the sheep. It's more about Herman Puffenbarger and me and Roy Wagoner. Roy Wagoner lived not too far from the store, Mullenax's store, where they used to buy all the deer hides in New Hampden. And Roy Wagner was another one just like Herman. Friendly, giving, kind, never rude. It's almost as if when you read scripture, some of those gifts of the Spirit, so many people in Highland County had that.
That is correct.
You know, it's incredible. Well,
and I remember Roy. I love these names that keep popping up with you and Lester and everybody, because it's just, you know, these I have treasured memories of these people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll carry these memories to my death.
I know. Well, so now we're sharing it. So some of them, you know, some of the influence that they had on us, we get to share because the goodness of it was overflowing. Yes. And that's why our hearts are so full of these people.
For the listener who doesn't know how sheep shearing is done, first of all, you need a bunch of sheep. And then second of all, you need the realization that when spring comes, they have too much wool on their bodies, and you got to do something with it, and you can't burn it off. So you have to shear them. And you need to have people that know how to shear. I went to, I think it was Gordonsville, to one of the USDA training centers, and I took classes in shearing sheep. And it totally sold me on the fact that I never wanted to touch a sheep to shear. Okay. But I can shear a sheep.
Well, and isn't the goal to try and get the fleece off in one piece, one continuous
Are
piece?
you kidding? Well, not for a beginner.
No, but that is, the professionals do that.
Yes.
You know, the fellows that are out there, and this is what they do. This is part of their livelihood. Everybody cobbles together a bunch of skills that they have in the mountains.
Yeah.
And sheep shearing was one of them. And the same guy that was a sheep shearer could also have been either a blacksmith or a corn farmer or a cattle raiser or whatever it was. But they, you know, this is one of the things that they did.
Linda, do you remember seeing those towers that you climb up? They set the wool bags down into the towers. Okay. My job, was to climb up the tower, get down into the bags. And when they throw these entire wool fleeces up into it has to come past me first to the bottom of my feet. Exactly. Burdocks, sheep poop, thorns.
I bet you didn't have a mask on.
What was a mask?
I know. That's my point. Now everybody, you know, COVID made us all aware of what a mask is, but people back in the mountains didn't wear masks for anything.
Not for anything.
They didn't wear it for anything.
No. So, and my job was to pack the wool down and pack it down because I couldn't shear the sheep, and I wasn't strong enough. I only weighed about 100 at the time, maybe 100. They did what they did. So all the young bucks, Herman's kids and Charlie Weiss, his brother Johnny Weiss, and they were the ones that had to catch the sheep and set them down for the shearer.
Wrestle them, put them on their butt butts.
Yeah.
On their little rumps with their legs sticking out.
And
they
really,
started.
and that's not so hard to do. But still, I don't want to do it because they're covered with stuff.
Everything they covered with stuff.
But I had to kiss that stuff going past me anyway to the side. So I'm stomping the wool down. And in between two wool fleeces that were thrown down and I was in the bottom of the bag.
Right.
I had that natural urge to smoke, and I was a heavy cigarette smoker.
Don't tell me.
So I light up a cigarette.
Oh, no.
I used to smoke Camels, and I light the cigarette up, and I remember Herman saying, "Why, Tony, what are you doing?"
Because the smoke is rising up like a campfire smoke out of the bottom of his bag. He's probably flipping out.
Well, I thought he was more excited than he needed to be. I said, "Well, I'm smoking." "You can't smoke inside the bag with the wool." And he came running over. He said, "You got to put that out." And he said, "Here, do this." So he pulls out a small tin of tobacco. Snuff. Okay. And he said, "This will help you.
Get through.
It's tobacco." Yeah, get through. So I take the can of snuff. Okay. So I took a big glob
You've
of the
never
stuff.
done snuff before.
I had never done snuff before.
That's hardcore. That's very hardcore.
I stuck a bunch of that between my lip and my gum, and I left it there. And the longer I left it there, the sicker I got. I thought, this is the most disgusting stuff.
Well, where did you spit? Because you're supposed to spit.
Where do you think I spit?
Well, I don't know. Down your shirt. What did you do? You mean into the wool?
The wool had everything else in it.
Yes, it did, didn't it?
But I didn't just spit. I got rid of that wad, and I said, "I'm not doing this." And to this day, I've never put a piece of tobacco in my mouth because for me, it's disgusting.
Yeah, I got you.
And some people love it. They could do it. My brother-in-law, who's disabled, I have to get him his on a weekly basis because he doesn't smoke. He used to, but he does that. And every time I get it for him, I think, thank God I don't put that in my lips anymore. I would rather smoke.
Well, there was a funny thing. I've got to quickly tell you a story that, maybe Dan would get to tell if he was here, but then my husband is not here for this. But he used to tell me a story of a man, a friend of his, who he met for the first time, who climbed out from under a truck that he was working on when Dan went on up to visit him on his farm. And Dan thought that something in the truck had fallen on him or something because the whole front of his shirt was blood-stained. But it was from the snuff. But when he got out, his name was Charlie, and he got out from under the truck and stood up and then got into the front of his truck, then Dan looked, and he used to spit at the gear shift knob. So there was a mountain of accumulated spit like a volcano right around the gear shift. It barely had room to move, but there was a volcano of spit accumulated. He was a serious, what do you call it? It's not.
What would you call that?
I don't know.
I've never heard of doing something like that.
I know, but he did. That's Dan's story.
Common decency says you get a pop bottle.
I know.
And you keep a pop bottle next to you.
He just did it right. He didn't have a pop bottle. Didn't use a pop bottle. Didn't care. Got a mountain, volcano-shaped mountain in his truck. But anyway, it's there are and there are lots of people that stuff their little cheeks full and they're under their tongue. Does it go under the tongue?
But at the time up in Bluegrass, all the guys either did smoke or did snuff.
Right.
But that cured me of snuff. It really did, and I'm glad. But we finished the sheep shearing. I never touched a sheep, but I touched every single one of those things. And you just stomp wool for the day. And the hardest part of the job is when they empty a bag and you're so happy. The thing is that another bag goes right in place, and you got to get back down to the bottom, hoping that it hurries up and fills up so you can get to the top and breathe again.
How many sheep do you think they do in an hour? How much some of them were just 3 or 4 minutes a sheep, right? I mean, they're really fast. They use electric clippers. Now, when way back in the day, some of the guys that went around had the clippers.
There was a machine.
They would have to have somebody turning the clippers to generate
Up at Rowan Selman's place, they one year when he still had sheep, he asked me up to help him, and he had a fellow come with a young boy. The young boy was the crank turner that would make the scissors work.
Right.
This man was 80 years old.
Wow.
Somebody else had to sit the sheep for him,
Right.
but he could shear it, and he would shear it, but not as fast because it was a hand crank machine.
That's correct. And you didn't want the whole objective was to not cut the sheep's flesh. You were trying to get as close as you could,
Right.
because you wanted to, get as much off of them as you
Exactly.
could.
As much off, but without nicking, without cutting. But these old guys were good.
I remember taking the wool that when somebody would shear my sheep, and I don't think you gave me the drop spindle, but I remember learning to spin wool with a drop spindle, the way the Indian squaws did when their papoose was on their back, and then they did everything off of the front.
And you're always spinning. You're always
That's right.
spinning
You're
because
always-
no matter what you do, if you walk into market, you're spinning.
That's right.
So but that really is a way of life, and it's really cool because that's what you use to make your clothes.
That's correct. And I remember up on my farm one year, I took some of the wool and I didn't spin it, but the wool is very full of lanolin and it's very water resistant because it's what keeps the sheep very dry.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember making some vests out of burlap sacks, feed sacks. And I would simply pull the wool through. Once I'd got the pattern, then I just pulled the wool through, and then I had wool vests, double-sided wool vests.
And talking about wool stuff you can make with all kinds of stuff with wool, you remember Scoop Swecker?
Sure I do.
Okay, one day after he sheared his, I wasn't helping him on his farm, and I don't think he was over at Herman's. But one day he drives back up over the mountain to Fitz's house, and he brings me 2 sheep pelts that after they finished shearing, they slaughtered a couple of ewes.
Right?
And
oh, wow.
And he said, okay, well, Tony can use these because he's weird. He's got that thing.
There's that weird guy, Tony and the teepee guy.
So he brings me those 2 pelts, and I told him, thank you so much. Now I have a winter coat. And I made a coat with sleeves.
Oh, for
and
goodness
everybody
sakes.
in Bluegrass, there comes Scoop's skins. There, I remember Puff and Margaret's story. They said, "Are those the pelts you got from Scoop?"
Oh, isn't
I said,
that
"I didn't get them
something?
from Scoop. He gave them to me."
Yeah, isn't that neat?
I didn't work for him. I didn't trade with him. He just came and said, "I got a couple of pelts for you." But I wore that coat for a winter. I gave that coat to somebody who didn't have one because I had a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And when you have a lot of stuff, you don't put anything away if you already have one of them.
That's right.
That's
really
my philosophy.
Good. I know. That's a great philosophy.
Yeah.
There was a time, if you're responsible for a farm really, really ties you down. At one point we had 80 animals on our farm, but I'm counting every chicken, every goat, every lamb, every horse,
Yeah.
And I don't know that there were that many there when you were there, but there was, when we would want to leave for the winter and take a break, Billsy, my husband, and I used to ask you to come sit on the farm, and you were so gracious to do that. That is a luxury. Farmers don't,
Do you know why
have
I
that
was
kind
so
of luxury.
grateful and gracious to do that?
Why? Because you would have more room, stretch your legs?
No, because I knew that you used to can this fruit compote with raisins and stuff,
that's right.
and your root cellar was full of these jars.
That's
And I
right.
don't know if you ever noticed that every time you came back from a trip, if I was there, you had no more fruit jars
Oh,
left.
that was fine with us.
I
That
would
was a
eat
good
them all.
trade-off.
I wouldn't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I had fruit, and fruit.
Did you ever eat any of those big? There was one time when we left, there were big Hubbard squashes. We put them under our bed upstairs. They were Hubbards. They were like, we used to make the equivalent of pumpkin pies out of them. Matter
Yeah.
of fact, we made Hubbard squash pies, and they were absolutely delicious.
Well, those are better than pumpkin pies.
Yes, and they lasted longer than a pumpkin. A pumpkin's thinner
Yeah.
skinned, and it's like an acorn squash skin. It's tougher,
Yeah.
and it's about the same color, but it's as
Yeah.
big as a big pumpkin.
They're huge.
Very
Were
huge.
they knobby?
No, they weren't knobby.
They had
They
the
were
kno-
smooth skinned, but they had a variegated color. They were slightly orange, a little bit of white, and then green,
Yeah.
and just
My
beautiful.
kids know what those squashes are, and they call them Jackson squash, because when I was teaching up in Bath County, I taught some children, children of Arnold and Carolyn Jackson. She passed away. And Mrs. Jackson, uh, she lived in Hot Springs. She used to make pies, and she never knew what kind of squash they were, but she would bring them to me, and my kids got hooked on eating pies made out of, and they said, "What is this?" I said, "Well, I don't know. Some kind of squash that Miss Jackson gets."
That was all they needed to hear.
So, and they still call them Jackson squash pies.
Oh, how cute is that?
But they were the Hubbards, because I asked Ms. Jackson, "Carolyn, what do you make this with?" And she said the big gray with green stripe, model.
Yeah.
She said they're the best things for making pies. I said, "Okay, well, the kids are really happy that you make those and bring them."
Well, did you have any other adventures, or share some of your thoughts about being up there? Our farm was very isolated. Also, we had no electricity when you were staying up there. It was all kerosene lamps and wood stoves.
The best adventures I had up there is that I could take Luce up on the mountain. And
Luce was our Irish setter, Luce dog.
But the only problem with Luce is that he knew that if we're in the mountains, they belong to him. He can leave me alone. I don't see him for an hour or two, and I'm worried stiff, thinking, "Oh my gosh, if he doesn't come back, what am I going to tell Linda? What am I going to tell Billsy? They're going to be really upset, But he would always come back.
Yeah, he was a mountain dog.
But at your place was the first time I ever saw a bobcat.
No joke.
No joke. Right above the house, probably not even 400 or 500 yards.
I know
into
exactly.
The
On that, the hill started to get real steep beyond the chestnut fence rails, and then there was a strip, quite a pasture, a high pasture we call it, with a nice big flat rock on it. I used to go up there and just meditate. Just go on up, and it was the most quiet spot, and it could be snow covered all the way around, but because the sun melted anything on flat rocks fast, you could always get a dry seat. You just needed to find the right rock.
That's it.
And that was my go-to. That was my go-to rock. And the vista from up there was just absolutely fantastic.
Well, your house was probably one of the most darling houses that I was at, because it was large enough to accommodate God's love and all the things that you had, and it was small enough to feel so cozy.
It was very, very cozy, and so it didn't require a lot of cleaning. We had a pantry downstairs and a kitchen, and then the living room. That was that. And then you walked up a humble set of staircases. There was a humble set that led up from the kitchen up to, there were 3 rooms upstairs, a pantry-sized room above the pantry, and then there were 2 bedrooms. And one of them had a wood stove, and the other didn't have a wood stove. We took the heat from the living room that rose up. So that's how people sustain themselves on second stories. They either cut holes in the floor if they didn't have a vent right above their wood stove, or they had to have a wood stove in the room, or they just got real cold.
My recollections of your house is that every time I walked through your door, I felt peace and comfort.
Oh, isn't that charming?
And it was so wonderful going to see Billsy and Linda. Hey, let's go to Billsy and Linda's. Absolutely. Anytime somebody says, "Let's go to Billsy," yes, let's go.
That was just a fun place. It was. I looked at it as a real pleasure. We didn't have water for so long. I really had to haul water for all of these animals. Of course, the horses and the goats, if I'd let them out, had access. But when the goats were penned up, I had to haul water for the goats and the chickens, and water.
I remember
would freeze.
Biggers.
Biggers
was the big workhorse that you had.
Yes, he was.
Old Biggers.
Yep.
Biggers was the only horse that I felt safe enough to just walk up to and hug him around his neck and just feel, especially in the winter, because you guys always used to leave in the winter.
That's correct. We left in the winter time.
Yeah.
Go get our yayas out or something.
Yeah.
We would go. I remember we traveled out to Santa Fe, New Mexico one year, and another year you were up there. We got to go to Jamaica. That was, sort of an unheard of kind of break. Most mountain people didn't get to do that. And it was a real blessing for us to do that. There was one winter after I first had the baby where for 3 months I didn't go anywhere because we couldn't get out.
Yeah.
You were just, back in the day, it used to snow. And the snow stayed on the ground.
Yes.
And
that's why Herman Puckmugger used to go and get me if he needed help. He didn't go in his truck. He went in his snowmobile because
Oh,
the
there you
truck
go.
wouldn't make it back
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And I didn't
You know?
I didn't have a snowmobile. When you were there, you were there with the goats. You milked the goats
Yes.
for me, I believe.
Yeah.
That was good milk.
Sure
Nubian
did.
goats, the long floppy-eared
Yeah.
goats, had just the richest milk.
Yeah.
And they were such sweet animals. We had a whole collection of animals when you were up there. We had the geese.
Yeah.
I'm sure the geese were there when you were there. If anybody came up the hollow, they were better than a watchdog.
Yes.
They let you know.
Yeah.
They let you know who was coming.
Also, on your place, I saw something that I've never seen before or after. I was up at your place one Easter. It was Easter Sunday
Wow.
when we had an ice storm that destroyed half
Oh,
the
you could
trees.
hear the trees just
Yes.
snapping. Oh, it was heartbreaking.
I was standing
Civil
on
War.
the side of your porch looking down the driveway,
Oh.
looking down the fence towards, not the driveway, the gravel way.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
Looking down, and there was a large tree. It was an oak tree that grew right by the fence. And I heard the snapping and the
Oh.
falling and all the sounds. So I just stood out there because I was amazed. I was amazed. While I'm standing there, one of the oak trees at your fence, I think I told you because the oak tree is in destruction. I just happened to be looking in that direction when the bowl of the tree simply split apart and the whole tree collapsed on itself.
Oh,
The
wow.
whole tree just split
Oh, that's really
apart.
wild.
And that really was wild. And then there was, splinters and branches and pieces of
Oh,
wood.
yeah.
But I've never seen a tree split, literally split
Yeah. Split right in half as if it had been struck
from the
by
center,
lightning.
not
but it
fall
was,
over.
Right. I got you.
Fall in on, yeah. I don't know how that, so much weight
That's correct.
was on that tree.
And it's unusual. The oaks you always think of them as they're the vanguards that continue to stand when everything else, snaps around them. But
Yeah.
those ice storms would be pretty tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
And it's scarred up for a long time. It's always very, very heartbreaking. It's when you see your friends in the forest fall because they become your friends. When you're out there walking the trails and riding the trails, it's just you don't even want to look in the direction of fallen trees that meant so much to
Right.
you. It's painful.
And yet at the same time, like at Fitz's place, if you walk up the hollow, you can see huge trees that fell maybe 100 or 200 years ago.
They regrew.
And they're mother trees, they're nursery
that's
trees,
right.
and there are things growing on them and out of them, and you go, what beauty. But if you see the tree fall, you cry because what loss.
That's right.
So
You don't know. There's no guarantee. And the fact is, you probably won't live long enough to see something majestic come out of that.
exactly. So we were blessed to see the majesty
That's right.
long after the destruction.
That's exactly right.
We were blessed, Linda.
I know it. It was a special time that few people got to have. How many times do you get to go in America and live in some place for a decade or more without electricity and without any of that stuff? I mean, for 25 years, I had no TV and I missed out on all the popular culture, but somehow I don't think I missed much.
And Linda, you said that when you used to go to Jamaica and, you felt like not everybody can do that.
Right, right.
However, if you had asked me, wouldn't you love to go to Jamaica with them? Would you love to go to Malibu Beach? Wouldn't you go? I would have said no.
No, you would have stayed.
No.
You would have rather have stayed.
I never wanted to leave the mountains.
I know. I got you.
I never wanted to leave. And I still would be we still live in the mountains, but I would still be in the mountains if I really wasn't getting older and had to earn a living.
That's correct. And that's the way it was. We left the mountains, to make a living. We had some other incidences happen where we had to sell our business, went through a divorce, ended up getting remarried, which is a wonderful thing. So we put it all back together. But when you make those missteps, they cost you. And
Yes,
so they
they
took
do.
me out of the place that I really loved, or I'd probably still be there now. But I'm glad that I don't have to haul water and take showers outside,
Yeah.
boil the water on the wood stove and stand outside in November and, take a pitcher of hot water and pour it over myself. I'm real glad.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing. But the truth is, that was still worth the trade-off, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
All of the
was.
conveniences that we think we can't live without
Yeah.
were really, really worth the trade-off. I never missed any of it. I never missed, but we did have a generator, and at Christmas time, we would take the generator out and I would string this. We planted a blue spruce in the yard and I would string lights on it with no electricity, but we fired up the generator.
Yeah.
We put Christmas carols on our little record player And then we got to have Christmas lights out in the
That's
middle
beautiful.
of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And we would just do that for, a few weeks in the wintertime.
Yeah.
That was just a fun way to,
Mhm.
celebrate Christmas. What else do we have?
Well,
Oh, tell me about doing your laundry. Although we've got 3 minutes. Tell me about
3
doing
minutes. I'll
Is that
make
long
this
enough?
really short.
Okay, good.
Yes. Well, a lot of people think that they would say dirty hippies. I was not a dirty hippie. My clothes were clean all the time. The reason why they were clean is every night I washed my socks. And when the pants got dirty after 2 or 3 days, I washed my pants, washed my T-shirt. My white T-shirts were a dark gray, but they were clean every day. Okay,
Right, I
because
got
they
you.
were old.
Yeah, right.
Well, I always used to do that. So one day I had to wash my clothes. I mean, I washed them anyway, and I hung them outside on some shrubbery. All right. Now, I didn't know because I didn't have a radio at the time. I didn't know what was coming. And we had a rain, icy storm, and my clothes froze to the shrubbery so bad I could not get them off. And I did not get that set of socks, underwear, T-shirt, pants, and shirt, the whole set of clothes, till that spring.
Oh, come on, really?
I was not going to tear my clothing to tear them
that's
out
right. That's
of
right.
the
You would
frozen
have
branches.
too. Yeah. Oh, for goodness
I had to
sakes.
wait until everything was thawed. They got covered with snow. You could see the mounds around the bushes, Go, that's where my pants are. I'm going to have to see what I can do, But that was life.
Yeah.
That was life. And you live with it. You didn't cuss it. You didn't say, oh, I'm getting out of here. You just live with it and you make do. And you go to step number 2, whatever step number 2, plan B. Whatever that plan B is.
Plan B. You better
that's
have
where you
a
go.
plan B. Living in the mountains taught you to have a plan B.
Yes.
And a plan C.
And it also taught you that if you didn't have plan B, you made one up real quick.
That's right.
Real
Isn't that
quick.
something?
But it was fun.
It was fun.
was fun.
You felt exhilarated. You were
Yes.
alive every day.
Every
you were
day.
challenged. Every hour had a new twist to it.
Yes.
And it was all on you.
Yeah.
And that's very, very exhilarating because you have to go deep into yourself and draw from a deeper part of you that you aren't used to drawing on. Life has gotten really easy. I mean, I know the difference, even for me. It's much, much easier in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't challenge you. And a part of me has gone to sleep because of that,
Mm-hmm.
which is not, it's a different thing. Well, good grief, Tony. It's time to say goodbye again.
It's time again.
Oh my gosh, again. So I think we can crank this up next Friday at noon. Let's do one more. Let's come up with some more
Wonderful.
stories, and we will see you all next Friday at noon.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Front Porch Tales, courtesy of Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia, the only moving company with a consignment shop, auction house, and real estate division. We are a one-stop shop for any senior making a move. Check out our website at crowningtouchusa.com. Or if you are planning a move, call Anna at 540-982-5800 to arrange a free estimate. Our consignment shop is open Tuesday through Saturday, and we accept items on appointment and offer pickup and delivery. And don't forget to check out our monthly browse and bid auctions at 6712 Williamson Road, Roanoke, where you can bid online on over 1,700 items each month. Meanwhile, let's get back together next Friday at noon for more Appalachian Tales from the Front Porch on Fox 910 and 104.3.